You want to look up in the camera and say hi? Kitten says hi. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels, and Key Cat says hi. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, and the kitty's going to rock my laptop. But first, the usual disclaimers. All right, folks, you are going to see the link to this article we're about to go over right there in the description box, alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, plus the templates, you know the drill. Sign your name, click on your senator, especially right now. This is hitting the floor in May, okay? We also have the ever-present self-explanatory Change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. Now, folks, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones, all right? Okay. So this one has an interesting title here. It's The Carpet Felt 5 Inches Thick, a Socio-Spactial Analysis of the Judge Rotenberg Center, and it's written by Rhea Shields. Okay. A major research paper submitted to the Graduate Program in Critical Disability Studies and partial fulfillment of requirements for the degree of Master of Arts Graduate Program in Critical Disability Studies in York University, Toronto, Ontario. This was done on May 2019. Not that far back. Sorry. Phlegm. Spring is here to torture me. Now, folks, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones. And folks, it's 4:52. Obviously, I'm brain dead. So if I stumble over any words, my apologies in advance, alright? Okay, acknowledgements. I am indebted to the survivors of the JRC, especially writing of Jennifer Masumba, without whom the paper would have not been possible. I extend a special thank you to the tireless activism of the members of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and of ADAPT, in particular Lydia X.Z. Brown's online repository and archive of the Judge Rotenberg Center's abuses, which enabled me to access articles, find survivor accounts, and to locate important legal documents in the completion of this project. Amen! Autistic Hoya, freaking Lydia Brown, thank you from all of us. Special thank you to Nancy Davis Halifax and Stan, my supervisor, and Geoffrey Rium, my advisor, for their academic guidance and support. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the children, youth, and families I am so honored to support and who support me in my learning and development as well, including, okay. So there's a lot of acknowledgments there. I just wanted to acknowledge the first part here. Okay, we're going to start with the abstract. Referencing Volkan Goffman and the lived experiences and testimony of survivors of the Judge Rotenberg Center, JRC, Canton, Massachusetts, read alongside the writing of geographers, architects, and sociologists exploring the design and space of theme parks and institutions. My research will explore the ways in which institutions and theme parks utilize similar methods to control the experience of those within their manipulation space as a means to redirect bodies. My MRP seeks to examine the juxtaposition between abusive practices and the bizarre Disney-esque design of the space of the JRC, which bears many of the hallmarks of the theme park. Referencing the history and the functions of the theme park, I read alongside history and functions of institutions for those labeled with autism and intellectual disabilities through the case study of the JRC. I draw upon Sarah Ahmed 2006 to ask what it means to be oriented spatially, physically, bodily, and temporarily in institutional spaces. In particular, I use Ahmed's 2006 Queer Phenomenology to explore the ways in which autistic bodies are redisoriented by the fantastical space of the JRC, which looks like an acid trip got horribly wrong. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. Okay, here's the table of contents. Okay, introduction. Reflecting on her first visit to the Judge Rotenberg Center, former student Jennifer Masumba recalls, walking in, my senses were bombarded with loud colors, odd sculptures, Dr. Seuss-style furniture, and the Coca-Cola song creepily playing repeatedly in the stairwell. Masumba, 2014. Journalist Rachel Gummerman, 2007, likened entering the JRC to stepping into a carnival funhouse, and describes the lavish decor inside the building, including 2 brushed aluminum dogs, each nearly 5 feet tall, and sporting a purple neon collar guarding the front entrance. Giant silver stars dangling from the lobby ceiling, and the garishly painted furniture and walls. Another journalist, Ed Pickleton, 2011, describes the center in similar terms, remarking upon being bombarded by a riot of bright colors and surreal designs. Remember, what do we know about pretty much all neurodiverse? We all have hypersensory. To me, stepping in that place would be like walking into my worst fucking nightmare. Okay, some colors, particularly bright colors and pastel colors, if I'm surrounded by them, can actually induce in me a feeling of actual physical pain. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Since I'm slightly a masochist, I performed experiments to see if it was the colors surrounding my workspace when I worked for FedEx that was causing some of my issues, and the fact that I was hurting. I was having basically allergic reactions, and I wanted to see if they were psychosomatic. So I put myself basically in a bright yellow covered room, busted in the hives. That's how sensitive we are to colors and other sensory. So just keep that in mind. The JRC is a residential program located in Canton, Massachusetts, which professes to provide education and behavioral treatment to neurodivergent children, youth, and some adults, targeting those who are autistic, diagnosed with intellectual disabilities, and those loosely defined conduct, behavioral, emotional, and psychiatric problems, JRC-ND. The abusive practices advocated by the JRC's founder, Matthew Israel, which include the use of electric skin shock, seclusion, restraint, and food deprivation, have been subject to numerous human rights investigations, including several reports by the Disability Rights International, 2 United Nations UN Special Rapporteurs on Torture, and various children aid societies and departments of education. Mental Disabilities Rights International, MDRI 2010, Neuromeyer 2012, Davies 2014. The extreme treatment inflicted upon the children, youth, and adults who live at the JRC has resulted in the deaths of at least 3 youth. 6. It's 6. It's 6. Danny Oswald, Vincent Militek, and Linda Cornelison, and additional accounts of injuries and emotional trauma. MDRI 2010, Neuromeyer 2012, and Davies 2014. 6. In 2002, an 18-year-old autistic student named Andre McCollins made headlines when he was tied to a restraint board and shocked 31 times for refusing to take off his jacket when he arrived at school that morning. He suffered from third-degree burns and severe emotional trauma as a result of the incident specifically, and his overall experience at JRC more generally. Remember when they said, but it doesn't cause any damage? The fuck do you call third-degree burns, Karen? CAH, those are real injuries. Sorry, couldn't resist. and his overall experience at the JRC more generally, and Gonnerman 2007, MDRI 2010, Nermeyer 2012, Davies 2014. The dichotomy between the lavish Disney-esque design of the JRC building, contrasted with the testimony of former students, journalists, and activists about the abuses that have occurred within this colorful carnival-like space, will be explored in this paper. The JRC presents itself to parents, visitors, and the public as a beautiful, fun, and non-institutional program for children, youth, and adults who are considered by some to be the most difficult to serve. Those with intellectual disabilities, autism, and psychiatric disabilities who have been rejected from other programs and schools. They're referring to those autistic folks, by the way, who did not do well with ABA. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be they have a neurological disorder? Behavior modification doesn't fucking work? Just saying. You can try reasonable accommodations instead of trying to force us to all to be like you. Just saying. Or logic. Sorry. The JRC described itself as a program of last resort for children and young people labeled as challenging, emphasizing its distinctness from the institutional spaces in which disabled people have historically experienced violence and trauma. This distinction is made largely based on JRC's rewards area, what it terms as unparalleled reward system. Oh, for fuck's sakes, can you empathize us even freaking further, Karen? Fuck me. And its beautiful decorated residences and school building. JRC, you know, I could do without the rewards. I would rather not get rewards than be stuck in that hellhole. At the same time, the JRC is the only program in North America that uses electric skin shocks applied to a device called the Graduated Electronic Decelerator, GED. The use of the electric shock on these students have been deemed torture by two separate UN special rapporteurs on torture, Manfred Nowak in 2011 and Juan Mendez in 2013. They both urged for the U.S. federal government to do something, by the way, and to this day they have sat there and done fucking nothing. In fact, they've done the polar opposite. They've protected these bastards in the D.C. Circuit Court. And then denied the FDA the fucking right to appeal. The manipulation of space and careful design of reward areas within the school building and the use of electric shock and other painful punishments are, I will argue, intricately bound together. While the use of electric shock at the JRC has been the subject of controversy and efforts to prevent its use, the stimulated rewards area has received less scrutiny from those writing about the JRC, other than the brief notes about how unsettling it is or how strange the juxtaposition between the use of torture and the lavish decor appears. I've talked about the decor and the fucking stick and carrot and how condescending it is. In addition to the use of physical punishments called aversives, to normalize student behavior, the center is distinctive in its use of a large stimulated reward area modeled on the Yellow Brick Road in the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz. Oh, fuck me. I'd walk in, I'd say, well, I'm in hell. Students work their way down the Yellow Brick Road, literally a recreation of one from Frank I. Baum's classic children's book, by displaying appropriate behavior and earning privileges culminating in their interest into the Emerald City. Fuck me. In an area of the center painted green and bathed in artificial emerald light, where students can access various rewards, including trips to the indoor cinema, the use of a ball pit or an arcade, and access to an internet cafe furnished as a tiki bar, complete with synthetic palm trees. Fuck me. The juxtaposition of this indoor amusement park with practices of extreme violence and inhumane treatment is a recurring thing which I will tease apart in what follows. From the brief descriptions of the building provided above, I hope to give a reader a sense of the role of spectacle in the design of the environment, one that is created to all visitors. It is also deceptive. Parents and other visitors are reassured that JRC is not institutional and that the treatment program is as fun as a trip to the Disney theme park might be. Or my entrance in the fucking sensory hell. God. An affiliated institution run by JRC's founder, Matthew Israel's wife, called Tobin World, which uses a similar behavioral approach juxtaposed with the Disney-like architecture and rewards areas, was described as a student's mother's thusly. Next to Disney World, Tobin World is the happiest place on earth. Fucking kill me! Can I say that? Can I say that? Fucking kill me! You're gonna put me surrounded that many bright colors, that many pastels, and fucking fluorescent emerald lighting? Are you asking for violence? Because that's how you get violence. Okay, response to Tobin World preview video posted on YouTube. Disneyland, I didn't have two adults sitting on me, suffocating me to death. Thank you. A former student of the JRC, Rob Santana, who also experienced incarceration in the prison system, describes the JRC as a worse than jail. The worst place on earth. Think about that for a minute. When the dude looks at you and he says, "Can I go back the fuck to jail now?" Think about that for 5 minutes. This dichotomy in the way the JRC presents itself, juxtaposed with the use of extreme physical and psychological violence towards students, functions to disorient and confuse inmates in what is, I will argue, borrowing from Sarah Munn 2006, an attempt to disorient inmates towards normative ways of relating to the world and their environment. In other words, they want to make us like you fucking people. And the fact that we're not like you fucking people bothers these people so goddamn much that they're gonna just fucking torture the disability out of us. Or at least traumatize us enough that we're no longer a bother. That's what it is. That's what it is, folks. The fact that the JRC adopts methods that have long been used to control visitors in other themed spaces such as amusement parks, including the use of theming shock and decontextualization, is of interest in thinking about how the JRC presents itself as fun and rewarding while concealing the more sinister aspects of its programming, and is used by a way of justifying abusive methods. I'm sorry, any fucking school that pulls up that much of Wizard of Oz, the parent should see a red flag immediately. That's not fucking normal. That is not fucking normal at all. I've been to group homes and programs all throughout my state. Not one of them looks like freaking Wizard of Oz met Martha Stewart and then met an acid trip, okay? It's like Willy Wonka on acid and crack. Alright, I hope it is clear that my intention is not to suggest the spaces of the theme park and JRC are equivalent in the way individuals are subject to control, but rather than am attempting to explore how and why the JRC utilizes staples of theme park design. This will require an understanding of the history of institutional spaces created in the past that contain and manage people labeled with autism and intellectual disabilities, as well as understanding the design of spectacular spaces such as Disney theme parks. My search is grounded in the theories of Goffman on the total institution, Foucault on discipline, and the docile bodies in space, Amen on orientation, and most importantly, accounts from the survivors at JRC themselves. Folks, well, I'll get to it in a minute. Okay. Goffman, 1961, points out that institutional spaces are ones in which cooperativeness is obtained from persons who have often caused to be uncooperative. Foucault's work on docile bodies has assisted me in my exploration of how people who have every reason and right to be uncooperative are rendered docile in part by the physical layout of the spaces they are placed in. In the case of the JRC, I examine in particular how the space is further and further subdivided using of through the use of partitioning, which will be explored in general depth in what follows. So we'll get to that particular part a little later. So let me tell you what I see from those photos. My hell. I see my fucking hell. In the interior, what I see is my goddamn sensory nightmare. That is the stuff of nightmares, folks, for me. Okay? The humming fluorescent lights, the bright-ass fucking colors, the fucking Wizard of Oz gone Disney on crack. I don't know what the hell that is, but it creeps me the fuck out. I can tell you that right off the bat. That is a sensory fucking nightmare. Sensory fucking nightmare. Now, usually in sensory nightmares, we tend to go one of two ways. For me, it would provoke violence. And if I was able to hold down and not commit violence and keep the meltdown in, then it would cause physical psychosomatic issues would pop up. Remember I spoke to you about that all yellow room and the hives? If I'm holding down a meltdown and I'm resisting the urge to be violent, then the issues I'm having will present themselves in a physical manner. Yes, even showing up as such as allergic reactions. So, what are we trying to do here? Disorientation. We're trying to do two things. Disorient the student and brainwash the parent. Because these parents, unless they've talked to us for a good long while, they don't understand what this type of environment, what be surrounding and this type of space does to a neurodiverse person. Because our sensory is extremely different from your regular average Joe on the street. It's hard for them to be able to comprehend or understand why that place would look like anything more than fun games, a fun learning place. You have to be one of us to kind of get the different kind of sensory hells that sort of place can be. It's disorienting, and it convinces the parents. But any school that has that kind of gear, and they're educating people all the way going into their 20s, one begins to wonder why, as the student ages, are they not put into less cartoonish settings? But I'll get on to that another evening. We don't get very many views on this channel, especially on this subject. The few that we do get do get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this evening. And as always, we here at Smelling Tea hope you have a good one.